Welcome to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. What's your train wreck? Everyone has one. The question is, are you going to live there or are you just visiting? Let's check in with Mary, Fran, and Kristen to learn how to come through not broken, but brilliant.
Hey everyone, before we dive into this week's episode, we have a resource that we wanted to tell you about.
Transform every week of yours with our Brilliance bit that will deliver right to your email inbox. Sign up for it at brilliantlyresilient.net and keep living brilliantly resilient. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Brilliantly Resilient. I'm Kristen Smedley here with my partner in crime, Mary Fran Bontempo, and we are already having a great time in our studio. Just going to call it a studio because our guest today is in a phenomenal studio and we're going to act like we're sitting right with him in his studio. We have Steven Rudolph today from Multiple Natures International, but way more fun is his website, feedyourtigers.com. Feed Your Tigers. We're going to be talking about what in the heck does that mean today. And I know we're going to be diving into a lot of stuff about brilliance, which is why I was so excited that Steven's coming on, because we don't get to have a lot of conversations about brilliance because we all keep having to reset and rise. And now we're diving into talking about our brilliance and all the different things. So Steven, thanks so much for joining us.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So okay. I want to dive into so many things with you, but I'm going to put myself on pause. I did increase my decaf coffee this morning, so I am not like going too insane about this interview. Let's talk about the name of your company, Multiple Natures International. Tell us where that comes from and what it's about.
Sure. So one of the things that's interested me over the years is what makes people unique. What makes people unique? What makes them, to use the brilliant term, what makes people uniquely brilliant? And I noticed that certain people had certain qualities that really would shine. In other words, some people were excellent at administration. They just had this knack for it. It came naturally to them. Other people had this knack for, like in my case, education. Like I got a part-time job, like to pay the bills way back when as a teacher. And in my first class, it was like, oh my God, I know how to do this. And within like half an hour, it was like, I heard the voice from the sky, like I wanted to be a rock star before then. It's like, you're not a rock star, you're a teacher. And I knew it and I could do it. And so some people have that brilliance in being an educator. For others, it's adventure. They take risks, and that's where they really shine. Or being entertaining, being funny and being out there. And so I was curious about like, what is it and why is it like that? And I won't go into the entire story, but I took a 21-year trip to India. I didn't know it was going to be 21 years when I first went.
Wow. You had a lot of pack for in that. That's a lot to pack for.
I came back with less stuff than I went with. It was sort of my exploration into this space, like what makes people unique. I wanted to like make a school, and I made a school like when I got to India, and the whole idea was everybody would understand their uniqueness. That was the spirit that I went with. And so while I was there, I studied with some of these traditional scholars who knew Sanskrit and things like that, and they broke it down for me, and I was able to access some really, old wisdom about what makes people unique. And then I took that information and I basically identified a number of different, what I call natures that people have. And these are some of the ones that I've mentioned. A protective nature, those people who want to prevent harm, loss, injury, injustice, and they're out there fighting the good fight for clients or for social causes or to protect the ancient languages. They're fighting for something. There's the educative nature, an administrative nature, a creative nature where people shine just by innovating. And we have all of these qualities, but some people have, and I call them tigers is what I call them, right? So we have all these tigers, but some people's tigers are bigger than others. And so I identified 9 of these, and there's a whole nother set of them that I developed, but I'll just focus on these for now. And that's where the word multiple natures comes from, which is that we each have a different nature, and there are these little sub-qualities that kind of make up our whole nature. So there's like the nature with the big N, which is our nature, our unique combination of these smaller natures or these tigers that sort of fit into that. So that's where multiple natures came from.
I really love
Fascinating.
the idea that you're calling these natures, because sometimes when we talk about brilliance, people think it needs to be a particular skill. Like you have to be
Mm.
good at math, or you have to know how to, I don't know, for whatever. You have to know how to do a skill. And it's really deeper than that.
Oh yeah.
It's an inner drawing towards a certain, like a nature, a thing that you are good at, but that has a lot of subsets to it,
Yep.
and therefore a lot of applications. And this is where Kristen and I always talk about this transferable skill thing. So when you look at
Mhm.
it as a nature, and you look at all the things that are within that maybe are skill sets, the way that you can apply that is almost limitless in all sorts of different areas, correct?
Absolutely. So I look at natures, I call them tendencies, how you tend to behave, how you tend to organize or to direct your energy. So when you walk into a situation, a circumstance, what do you do? Like there's a room of people. Do you start going up and introducing yourself and getting into conversations? Do you stand back and just sort of like watch people and look at them? Do you try to make people comfortable? And, are so where does your energy go to when you enter into any situation, if it's in the office or if it's in the work that you do? And the thing that drives you, and this is totally unconscious, is your natures. These are actually driving you whether you know it or not. And so when someone comes up to you and asks you directions, some people will go into great depth. Just you have to go here, and then and then you turn, and you're going to see a sign and they give you so much information. That would be in like an educative nature. Like you can't stop yourself from going into all those details. There'll be some people with what I call a providing nature. That's that tendency to give and serve to. They'll be like, "Oh, come with me. I'll take you there." So that's like a whole different way that you would route your energy, right? So just to give you an idea how these flavors work, and the skills are what develop on top of that. So if you have, which you do, a very powerful, and I'm talking to you, Mary Fran, and Kristen as well, a powerful, a very big educative tiger, right? It just oozes, right? You can see it. So you can also, on top of that nature, develop skills in curriculum design or lesson planning or creating programs. So those are skills that you develop on top of this nature. And so it's like if you've got a huge foundation, a huge tiger, and you build skills on top of that, well, that's where you can be uniquely brilliant. That's where you can, as using your words, embrace really that superpower, and you're not nearly as limited when you've got a smaller tiger and you're trying to build a monstrous castle or building on top of that, and it's just not enough of a foundation to do so. That's where people get it wrong.
You want to hear something funny? 2 weeks ago, I moved my oldest son down to Florida. He's got his dream job at Disney Corporation, and we were meeting people in well, it used to be called Downtown Disney. I forget what it's called now, some other name, with all the shops and the restaurants.
Yeah,
Disney
Disney
Springs.
Springs. Yes.
And I, of course, could not sit still long enough while he was hanging out with all these people. I mean, they're all 22-year-olds, right? So I was kind of making my way around. We all had to meet at this bus. We were going to go see the fireworks. Well, that place is like, it's triple the size since the last time I was there. And I had no idea what they were talking about, where they were like, my son was describing on the phone where to go. No clue. I'm looking at all this stuff. So anyway, there's a guy like cleaning up with his little broom and everything that works there. So I asked him where this thing was I had to get to. And he was let me take you with me. And I got to tell you, Steven, he was one of the most dynamic, fantastic people I have talked to in a long time. In our 10-minute walk, he was unbelievably positive and happy, and his whole brilliance just came through in walking me to where I needed to go. And he was so in joy of what he was doing in his life.
That's the sign. You use like the golden word here. When you're, because people ask me this question, how do you know which of your tigers is a big one? How do you know which of your natures is dominant, etc.? You know it when you do that activity and you feel joy doing it while you're doing it, not just like fantasizing about it. Like, for example, some people say, oh, I want to be an influencer, but they don't have a large entertaining tiger. And so if you put them in front of the camera or they're practicing, they're uncomfortable, they're not good at it. They make a huge effort, but the results don't come back. So while they're doing it, it's sheer pain for them.
Hmm.
It's kind of like wearing a shoe that's too tight on your foot. You know, it might look good, it might be expensive, right? But it's just pinching your feet and you just can't wait to get it off. So this example that you're giving of this person, he's experiencing that joy every moment while he's bringing you there. It's like feeding his tiger. So that's the feed your tiger part.
I got you. That's
So
the
Yeah,
feed your tiger. Okay.
you feed your tiger when you engage in your brilliance, basically.
exactly. That's it.
Oh,
Exactly.
I just love this because, this concept of brilliance is somewhat nebulous because we live in this, very logical, okay, here's a math problem, find the answer. We live in that kind of a world where we're looking for very specific terms and solutions and answers to things. And this is more experiential in terms of you have to experience this, you have to feel this. And I think there's been a disconnect between what people think are their skill sets and what they feel in their nature. So what you're attempting to do is tell people how to join those two things.
Absolutely. In some cases, it's possible to get your bigger tigers into your profession. Let's just say something like that. So if you're doing work as an educator and you're in front of groups and you're writing content, so if you've got tigers that are educative, creative, one that I call intrapersonal, so if you're doing like a personal development, all of those linguistic, all of those would be like pairing together a team of really super big tigers. And I would love to just use your terminology. First, brilliant, and the second, resilient or resilience. So the brilliant, what does it mean? It means to shine. If we think about when someone says that's a star, it's a superstar, a rock star. So stars are celestial bodies that shine, they give off light, but they also have gravity. They attract. So when we talk about things like abundance and the law of attraction and all those kind of things, that's what it actually means. So when a person is situated in themselves, when they're aligned with their tigers, at that point, there's a harmonization, there's a resonation, there are frequencies that are actually going out that other people are, I'm on your wavelength. I'm totally with you. And that's the brilliant part of it. It's not just like light like that, but it's that power that's coming out that people are resonating with. So to me, that's what the brilliant part is. And here's just another tidbit that's really interesting. The word guru that we've heard before so many times, many people don't know this, but the word guru, one of the meanings is heavy, but not heavy in the sense just like, like a rock, but having gravity, like weighty, like, whoa, man, that's heavy. So somebody who is an expert in their area, they're situated in themselves, whether it's like a teacher or not, it could be, a security guard, or it could be this person who's guided Kristen to where they're going. That person is situated in themselves and is, in that sense, in that moment, a rock star, is brilliant, is giving off that vibration, that wave. That's what it means to me. That's what I've understood. So that's the first part.
I love it. I love this gravity thing. I have to tell you, Mary Fran and I were both teachers. And I'll never forget when I was teaching in a really, really, really tough school in my 20s, I was teaching third grade. And I was like, that's when I realized, I think I'm meant for something else. I planned my whole life to be a teacher, but I was the third grade teacher, and the kids in the fourth and fifth grade were purposefully getting kicked out of their classes to come into my class. The principal goes, it's like a Broadway show every day. You never know what's going to happen. And people would walk by to hear all the crazy things. But I was like, I think I did look at it as I was producing a Broadway show. But then I was like, oh, and then when I found speaking, I'm like, oh, this is like we have a big speech this afternoon, Mary Fran and I. And I'm like, I can't wait to tell them all the things I know with this whole brilliantly resilient thing. But also this is, Mary Fran and I talk about this all the time, that this brilliantly resilient is so our brilliance, because we get so fired up and lit up when we talk about these things and talk with people about all of this. It's like our whole life of all this shit show that's happened. It's coming into brilliance right now.
Yeah. And it's also important to realize that brilliance doesn't necessarily mean having to be showy. It certainly can. And like in a case like yours, where you're a teacher, and as the quote goes, something like teaching is 25% education and 75% drama, or something like that, right? So to be a teacher in today's world means to have to compete with YouTube and or social media and whatnot. So having a big entertaining tiger along with an educative tiger is absolutely an asset. But I want to also point out that somebody who has, let's just say, a small interpersonal tiger, they're not really like interacting much with other people. They're not entertaining at all. They're not creative at all. That creative tiger is also a small one, but they're highly protective, for example, and let's say highly visual. So they're really good at protecting and visual. This person could be a rock star at, if you look at the airport baggage check. Every bag that goes through, it's like they're like the Terminator, and so you don't see their brilliance coming out, but in the space of what they're doing, they are totally brilliant. It's incredible what they're because they're experiencing and feeling it and doing that work. So what I want to also point out is here, brilliant doesn't necessarily mean you have to show it out. And that's a big misconception, because I see too many people trying to become influencers and go out there and having to be something that they're not. Mary Fran talks about this quite extensively, about ending our addiction to awesome, about people trying to be brilliant in areas where they don't have those tigers. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that can be made. You can be a librarian and just be the most brilliant librarian, but really quiet and non-script. So I want that to come out. And if I can, I want to also talk about this word resilient, because it doesn't get enough playtime in the world. To me, resilient means when I have a big tiger, right? Everybody's going to get challenges. The world is going to throw curveballs and all sorts of problems at us and chaos and make life challenging for us. But where I have a big tiger and I'm challenged and I'm thrown off my chair, I spring back with I land on my feet with some of the most intense and insane challenges that come to me. If it's something which is educative, or I have to do something, sometimes someone will say, Steven, the speaker hasn't come yet, and we have to kill 5 minutes or whatever. Could you just address the audience and say something? Just say anything, right? So having tigers that are big and entertaining and somewhat linguistic, I would say sure, and step up to the mic, and I would a bit adventurous, I would wing it, and I could do it. But if somebody doesn't have that entertaining and linguistic and adventurous and let's say a bit creative, they would die. They wouldn't be able to do it.
That's my daughter. Oh my God, I can just envision her turning green. She would just die. She doesn't have that tiger, but my sons do.
Well, and you raise an incredibly interesting and valuable point to this idea that it doesn't have to be loud and big and showy all the time, because we live in a world that is full of noise and something is always trying to grab our attention. And people feel like they have to play on that playing field, even if it's not where they're comfortable. And, Kristen and I have said, your brilliance could be that you're a great baker, and the entire world, your whole family, everybody knows that your cakes are amazing. And so I think it's so important that people get to understand that you don't have to be tap dancing on Broadway to show your brilliance, number one. And number two, here's another question that I want to ask of you. So now I'm in a situation where my brilliance, my tiger, is not necessarily the one that's going to help, whatever the situation. How do you draw in somebody else with their tiger? Because I would imagine that, I don't know if tigers are solitary or pack animals, but I would imagine a pack of tigers all doing their stuff could be really powerful.
That's like the art of engaging your tigers, and which is not just engaging your tigers effectively, but exactly what you've said, to understand what the situation needs, and then to bring the tigers to the situation. Where you've got yours, you bring them. In some cases, you might have smaller tigers, and guess what? You don't really have the chance to. You might be short on time. You can't recruit somebody or enroll somebody to help you, and you've got to tough it out. Well, in those situations, You need to know that I'm going to have to like tough this one out. And I know that my linguistic is not one of my biggest, but I'm going to have to push forward with it. Of course, if it's a situation which is something with regular, like where you encounter it on a regular basis in the office or someplace, or maybe in your community, that's where you will have the time to look at a colleague or a boss or somebody else and say, hey, listen, my linguistic is pretty powerful, but my creative is not one of my strengths. And I need to write an article and I'm just not getting stuck. Could I, insource some of your creative energy? And there you go. I mean, that would be like a very quick example. It's unfortunate that there's too much emphasis placed on having to be a lone wolf and and it is, what's the word? We tend to idealize that it's like the superhero, the super person, man, woman, whoever, that when they do it all by themselves, then that's what makes them great. And it's, in my opinion, it's very much the opposite. When I see the job that needs to get done, the greatness is when I can look at situation and see who's got which tigers and then enroll people to get that done. And there's a beautiful line that comes from the Tao Te Ching. It says that the master gets the job done without lifting a finger.
Oh, I love that. And
that sounds like my middle child. My middle son is exactly, it's interesting. I'm listening to you talk and it's firing all of my neurons about this topic that I talk about a lot with people with disabilities. The world has looked at them as less than and small tigers, where they have such my boys specifically, and the people that I deal with in the blind community, have such a unique way, because they've had to for survival, seeing who's got the big tigers that they need to call in to help them. And people look at asking for help as such a negative, and I see it as such a positive. And you can get there faster when you bring in other people, but especially bring them in with their big tigers that you don't have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how do you get people to, this is what you do. How do you get people to recognize their tigers and then, initiate that and ingrain that in their daily lives, and how they go about moving forward after that?
So I have two ways. One is more like a general approach, which I can explain. And then the other is I made an assessment that you can take, which is on my site. It's feedyourtigers.com. So there's an assessment that talks about the 19 tigers, and it will help you to figure those out. But just for the here and now, to make it easy, you don't even have to know the tigers in specific. You can also think about it generally. And I ask people to ask themselves these questions. What is it that I'm naturally attracted to? Like the things that I gravitate toward, that nobody has to push me, and I'm sort of self-motivated to. So that's an indication, number one. Number two, what is the thing that when I do it, I get fully absorbed in that and I forget about time and hunger and thirst and stuff like that. So that's also another really great indicator question you can ask yourself. Or not just the thing, because it's things. There are multiple tigers here, multiple natures. Another is that look at myself historically. What things have been like this for me all of my life? So when I was young, if I talk about an interpersonal tiger, was I always like this? Or if it's my entertaining tiger, was I always like this? Because sometimes people aren't sure. And because the tigers don't change much over the course of your life. They might change imperceptibly, but not a lot. And so that's another question that you could ask. So those are just some quick questions, ways that you could also figure that out.
It's really funny that you're saying this, because as soon as you said that, I'm flashing back to when I was, I don't know if I was a Girl Scout or what the heck I was, and there was some kind of an event that we were at, and they picked me to MC it as a kid. And I was so into that, and people were like, yeah, you did a great job. And it's exactly that at that very young age, that felt comfortable to me.
Right.
That was almost a safe spot where I didn't have to worry about not feeling grounded. And maybe that's another part of it. You feel grounded when you're in that space.
Yeah. Absolutely. It feels like home when you're there. So the same way when I mentioned the first time I taught, I was like, oh my God, I already know this. So that's what a nature is. Exactly. You feel grounded, you know it, you're drawn to it, you do it with ease. Another thing is like other people typically compliment you on that. Like as you just said, oh, you were great. You hear that a lot. You'll know that. Like if you're trying to do something and you're trying to be brilliant in a particular area and you're doing it for a long time, you don't hear compliments coming back. That's definitely something that you need to think about.
Do
Like
something
why?
else. Pick something else.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be that. You just need to feed the tigers and get joy out of like you've got so many of them to choose from. So like why try to, do gymnastics and contort yourself when there
It's
could
so
be an easier
funny.
way?
I'm thinking about, I was with my
That's so
parents
huge. The
on
whole
like
idea of joy.
the what?
No, I said the whole idea of joy. People think that, and Kristen and I, again, we talk about this all the time. Everything you're saying is hitting so many touchstones with us. It doesn't have to be blood, sweat, and tears. Like people think if it's not really hard work, then it's not valuable. And just the opposite is true. It's most valuable when you're working in that place that brings you joy.
Yes. Yep. And as I said before, you're going to face challenges, and so even if you've got a big tiger in whatever it is that you're doing, let's say it's an administrative tiger that you have that's really big, and you're a manager and you're doing a lot of like organizing things like that. So you're going to have problems. You're going to have challenges that are going to come to you in the projects that if it's an event or whatever it is. But that's where the resilient thing comes. And when you get those problems and there is some work involved, you bounce back and you do these like incredible things. And people go, oh my God, how did you do that? And it was just like, oh, I'm just doing my thing. But that would not come to another person who's not like, doesn't have a tiger that's as prodigious. So that's where the resilience comes in. And that's where it looks like hard work, but it's actually not.
But for someone else, it would be.
But for someone else, it would be. Exactly. That's it. That's the hard work that people suffer from.
When this weekend I was with my parents for Father's Day, and they love to bring up because I was complaining about my daughter not wanting certain jobs and stuff. And my best friend for my whole life, when you want to talk about her tiger waitressing, she just lit up. And she's still like that with my kids, loves serving them, bringing them the things the food that they love. And she takes them out to restaurants. She loved it. I wanted to shoot myself when I tried it for 1 hour with her. And what I did was, it was a place that had a salad bar. So I encouraged everyone that I had to wait on to get the salad bar, and then I would sit at their table, meet the family, talk to the people. I was like, I love the whole conversation, getting to know people. I love being in interviews, And then they were like, my friend goes, you can't do that. Like, you have to go fill the ketchup when you don't have anything to do. And I'm like, don't they have people for that? She was like, yes, you. And I'm like, but then I got a sales job where I was like selling newspapers on the phone. I won every sales competition because I was talking to people.
Kristen, your sound's going in and out. Your sound is going in and out. We're losing you. That's why we're kind of a little bit jumping in and out.
I think my Wi-Fi is a little crazy today.
Anyway, don't about this, about that. But about that sales job, what were you saying?
I won every competition in the sales job because I was talking people into buying stuff.
So there you go. So to me, what it looks like, your interpersonal tiger is enormous. Your entrepreneurial tiger is also really big. That's why the selling stuff is going to appeal to you. The providing tiger is not nearly as big, which is why in that situation, you weren't getting the joy from filling the ketchup and doing those things. But when you get an opportunity to interact with people in general, or you get an opportunity to interact with people and sell things, that's where the tigers are eating and they're more engaged and you're more successful at it. That's how to understand like why. And this is a big question. Why is it that resonated with your daughter, but not with you? Mm-hmm. Like, so here's an answer.
And I think this idea of one is not better than another. One is not more valuable than another, because each of these things has its place in the world, in society, in fact, in your own life. So it's just probably a matter of looking at it, Kristen and I always say your brilliance is your gift to the world. So it's a matter of looking at it and saying, acknowledging this is my brilliance. This is where I can contribute. And
Absolutely.
then, when other people are contributing, you kind of step back and go, yay, I don't have to do that.
Right. Listen, if everybody had the same, let's call them, the same big tigers or something like that, what a boring world it would be. Part of the fun and the mystery of life and the great challenge of life is figuring out what our tigers are, figuring out the place where we can show up and we can deliver something that's of value to the world. And that, to me, and from what I studied in India over all of those years, that's really what it was about. That these tigers have a social function. They are the things that give us a value to the others in our world. And the unique combination that we have, they're kind of like chess pieces, or I don't know how we might look at them, but you've got, some have the big providing, some have a small entertaining, some have a big, medium-sized protective. Your unique set of these qualities, what I call a nature with the big N. So that's what your uniqueness is. And there's this really great quote that I wanted to share with you that comes out of the Vedas, this texts that are like thousands of years old. And it says that there's not a letter that cannot be made into a mantra. There's not an herb that cannot be made into a medicine. And there is not a person without a quality. But the rare thing is finding that quality and bringing it out. So the kind of work that you're doing, I see you doing with your workshops and your materials, is that you're sort of like finding that, helping each person to find their uniqueness, what makes them unique and can contribute to the world, something that's valuable.
And that's why we love to celebrate. Not that we celebrate the sucker punches in life and the setbacks, but celebrating what the opportunity is that they bring to be able to, when everything is kind of stripped away and you really got to figure out how you're coming back. When you come back with that growth mindset of knowing your tigers, knowing whose tigers need to be on your team, like you come back so much more impactful and bigger and better.
Yeah. And I think you're clearer too. You're clearer on, this is my space. And I, it's so interesting to hear you talk about this, about how everybody having their own tigers. I personally, and I'm sure most people do, get real joy out of watching other people share their tigers. I mean, who doesn't watch like a concert pianist that's just their place, and watch them and go, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So I think when you become aware of your gifts, maybe you can also appreciate that. And in fact, look for that in other people who might not be as aware of their own gifts. And these are the opportunities where, if you're in an office or you're working with a team or whatever, you can say to somebody, you are really brilliant at XYZ. Yep. And that person might be kind of, people think, again, if it's not requiring great hard work, it's not worthwhile. When in fact, as somebody says to them, this is your gift, like this is what you can help us all with. It's validating for the entire society. And I really liked how you said these tigers have a social function. I love that, because it proves how we're all interconnected. And if we're all feeding our own tigers and feeding other people's tigers, then we all rise to create this really powerful pack.
That's leadership. To me, that's what great leadership is about. Whether it's someone in HR or it's a team leader, an organizational leader, being able to see these qualities and then to bring them together and allow each person to be able to feed their own tigers. It's a science and it's an art. And when that's happening, I like what you've just said now, which is how that enables you to understand and to appreciate other people's uniqueness. For me, what that does is that creates compassion that allows me to see that once I realize I'm not competing with other people, that I am perfect. I have everything that I need to contribute something of value to the world. I've met thousands of people over the years. I've guided them, students up to people in their 90s, and I am yet to find somebody who didn't have something that they could offer to the world. And in saying that, what I mean to say is, like, you don't feel that pressure of having to be like somebody else or to be something that you're not. And when you can be yourself, when you can be situated in yourself and love the tigers that you have, to be accepting of them, that gives you this feeling of contentment. And then you can look at other people in an appreciative way. To see, like, I have a guy who'll come to my house and he does carpentry work here. And I'm just in awe of how he does stuff that to him might seem really trivial. And I've got a great appreciation for that. I also recognize that when I'm in my area, that I can do really, really cool stuff. And so some people are like, wow, that's like Jedi stuff that you're pulling off there. So I recognize that I have my little space in the world where I get to be a Jedi, and other people have theirs. And that creates greater understanding, less conflict, more compassion, more harmony, so on and so forth. So yeah.
And more people to do other stuff that you don't have to do. Like, that's the brilliance of it to me too. Like, you don't have to take on everything, and you shouldn't, because in order for things to be done really, really well and effectively, you want to get the people whose brilliance works in the areas that you need. You don't want to necessarily be taking on stuff, as you said, and doing it half-assed just so you can be the lone wolf. I love that. Steven, this has been just an amazing conversation. And, Kristen and I are constantly tweaking and refining everything that we talk about. And you've given us so many new and really interesting ways to look at the concept of brilliance and resilience. So I thank you so much for that. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me on feedyourtigers.com. We'll keep it simple. You'll find everything that you need to get to me, to find out more about the tigers, to find out about your tigers. So all that stuff is there. And I just want to say thanks. I've had fun chatting with you guys.
Good stuff. We've had a good time too. So if you've got a ton of info about your brilliance and your tigers today. If you need more on your reset and rise, go to brilliantlyresilient.net. And make sure that you sign up to get our #1 tool, the wildly popular Brilliance Bit, that comes right to your email inbox once a week with a quote and a 1-minute deep dive from each of our guests that will keep you living brilliantly resilient all week long. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Join our Facebook group and follow us on YouTube to be inspired with tools to reset, rise, and reveal your brilliance.